Hello. Charles? Are you there, Charles?
Good evening, Anthony. Good evening, Graham. Sunday night and a warm
Hi,
one.
Charles.
A very
Well, yeah,
warm.
It's September, and one of my favorite albums is September of My Years by Frank Sinatra, which won a Grammy after it came out in 1965. And it's all about autumnal looking back at your life, and it's like a whole lifetime of highs and lows and failed romance boiled down to like little ice cubes of sorrow. And that's September. So this weather just doesn't suit. If the weather was like this when Frank Sinatra did September of My Years, the album might have turned out a little bit different.
What would your September album be about, Graham?
And well, these days, September, it's usually quite warm weather, so I wouldn't, and I usually go on holiday in September, so it wouldn't be an autumnal album. It'd be a sort of late summer album. It'd be sort of like the Beach Boys with their flip flops off, sort of laid back a bit, and stop and doing surfing and maybe having a drink.
September songs?
Well, September songs are traditionally autumnal and
They
a bit
are.
sorrowful or a bit
Yeah.
nostalgic or a bit wistful.
Mm.
But this weather doesn't work for that
It
at
does
all.
not. It does. It does. It does not. And in fact, it encourages you to get outdoors and go see exhibitions outdoors, and or go to, as I did today. I found myself listening to um, some brass band music, and
Good grief, it's
at
like
which was at
brass band music.
beautiful Barnby Hall Gardens, which are always one of
Hmm.
the delights of Pocklington. Are those gardens? You can have a lovely sandwich and soup, and then they have a summer season
Wait,
of
wait a minute.
concerts.
Is this like is this like a retirement home, Charles?
Well, Graham, here's a revelation. We had senior tickets,
Oh no! Oh,
and I did kind of think, and I looked, I did feel quite young actually. It has to be said, with
yeah.
those that were seated in the deck chairs that might never get back up from them.
No, no,
But
not that
actually,
list.
it was a beautiful Yorkshire Sunday afternoon, lazing on a Sunday afternoon in September in beautiful weather, and it was the last one of the season. And I thought it was rather beautiful in its own way, because it was the kind of way you might want people to behave of a Sunday afternoon, actually, which doesn't always
Well, yeah,
happen
yeah.
in public
It'd be nice if
space.
that was nice if that was done in a sort of like slightly younger, more modern way, though. It sounds a bit old school.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most modern tune probably was Bohemian Rhapsody. They did also do "Live and Let Die," and it was interesting to listen to this. The conductor said that it was grammatically irritating. I think she said, because the
Oh,
the line that which uses the word "in" three times and repeats "in" is grammatically not right, as it were.
does she realise that poetry has moved on from Lord Byron?
Not only
This
that,
this debate
it
about
is
this
a
debate about grammar in lyrics by rock stars was really big in the 60s. Yeah,
well.
I thought that battle was over.
It wasn't it about meter, isn't it? About the fact that it fits in. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but as the beatnik poets showed, who started in the 40s, you
Yes.
don't have to fit these rigid
No.
schemata to writing poetry. And in fact, if you
No.
look at the history of poetry over the last 400 years, the styles of poetry have changed radically on a regular basis, and the use of grammar has changed regularly as well. So that's
It
such a
has.
spurious
It
old
has.
timers argument.
Well, actually, one of the topics that you're wanting for us to discuss this evening, if I've used grammar badly there, forgive me, is a poet of modern times, poet I mean, a poet who's, well, he's a veteran, but I think in many ways, actually, John Cooper Clarke, Dr. John Cooper Clarke, as he now is probably more popular than ever, more high profile, gets television gigs, gets radio gigs, brings out his autobiography.
Yeah, well, the less he does, the bigger he gets. He's quite amazing.
So now you've read his autobiography, which of course came out in 2021, called "I Want to Be Yours," which of course is named after one of his best-known songs, stroke poems. And
Oh yeah, Arctic Monkeys covered it in 2013 on the platinum selling AM album, didn't they?
they did.
It's
And
like the last track.
Graham, have performed it at no fewer than two weddings.
Have you? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Mm. Was one John
Obviously
Cooper Clarke?
not with a John Cooper Clarke voice, it must be said.
I can't imagine you pulling that off.
I did it with my rather la-di-da voice, but there we go. So, Graham, what makes this a good biography? Because Cooper Clarke, you could speculate that maybe he'd be an unreliable witness, but actually, I think whenever he talks, he has phenomenal memory, he has phenomenal recall of culture, social significance, events, all put through the sieve of humour in his case. And is that what really is striking, that combination of what he writes about and the way he writes it?
Well, the thing is, when you first start reading it, you think, well, none of the observations he's making are super clever or super intelligent.
Mm.
But then you realize after about 20, 30 pages that every sentence is either funny or interesting or entertaining or shocking or a bit cheesy and unexpected. And so there's not a single, there's no build up. None of the sentences are there boringly to set up something else. Every sentence has a point. And there's 470 pages. That's a hell lot of sentences, all of which are interesting or entertaining. So eventually, after about 50 pages, you think, wow, this is a great book because I'm getting something out of every single sentence. And what he's good at is that he's good at describing his life from the 50s onwards. But because he was a genuine mad pop culture fan from a young age, and he was in bands as a kid in the 60s before he even became a poet, he's been through all the phases of rock and roll history at the street level by himself because he loved it at the time. So you're getting observations about the history of British pop culture and social history, which are his own experiences. They're not him looking from afar and describing what he thinks happened. It's all stuff that happened to him, and it all pertains to British rock and roll, pop culture, and various other relevant matters. So you're getting like an inside history of how Britain changed and how pop music and culture changed. So it's just constantly, you're never bored, and it's written with his voice. I can't imagine that he didn't write it himself. It doesn't feel like there's any element of anybody else in the book. It sounds 100% him from start to finish.
So
and
when
so
you're
eventually
reading
you think
it,
this is great.
when you're reading it, are you actually reading it in John Cooper Clarke's voice to yourself?
You can hear him speaking when you read it.
Yeah,
His voice is there in your ear when you're reading it. That's part of the joy of it. It's like having I was going to say it's like having John Cooper Clarke next to you in bed, but that is not only is that a bit weird. I'm not entirely sure I'd want that to happen at any point, even if given the chance.
I'd always like to ask this one. What did you learn about John Cooper Clarke that was most revelatory?
He's a man of contradictions, but in such a nice, easygoing way. So on the one hand, he's quite lazy. On the other hand, he's quite driven. On the one hand, he's not pretentious and he's down to earth. On the other hand, he's obsessed with what clothes people wear, what clothes he wears. He's got a real eye and a real flair for fashion. So he's a real massive contradictions. He's quite a wide ranging guy, but all that comes across in public is an easygoing wit in that distinctive Mancunian nasal drawl. But there's much more to him than that. He's quite deceptive. He's like a poetic iceberg, except not cold, obviously.
Now, a poetic iceberg.
Yeah, that's a good one, eh?
Just trying to analyze that one because icebergs clearly were not good news for the Titanic.
Yeah, but the icebergs. You see the tip above the surface.
We met him, and of course, cousin Ted was wanting to reconnect John Cooper Clarke with a tithe of John Cooper Clarke's that he'd had ever since John Cooper Clarke had stayed, which was definitely news to you and to me. But we slightly had to conduct our conversation with him as if we were interviewing him, which is a little unusual.
Bit, yeah. Well, I said to his face that you're the Elvis of poetry, which turned out to be a good line because in the book he does love Elvis, so I accidentally picked the right bit of praise.
So is he now in his Elvis Las Vegas phase?
No, not really. No, he's been in cruise mode, being successful now, touring very regularly across Britain for at least a decade. So, although he's no spring chicken, he's not young anymore. as you say, he's the biggest he's ever been. He's also the most. He's doing the most work, at least live. He's doing the most work he's ever done, because before he became famous, he works reasonably hard. First of all, in normal jobs, then in
Mm-hmm.
beat bands, then
Mm-hmm.
as an aspiring poet on stage. But once he made it big, after a good couple of 2 or 3 years in the late 70s, when he came up during the punk era, even though he looked like Bob Dylan from 1966 in the Blonde on Blonde album
Yes.
cover.
Yes.
Once he made it big, he could spend more time taking drugs, and he had more money with which to take drugs, to buy drugs. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how his lost decades came around, because he basically got so engrossed with drugs that the work became only a way of a means of making money to take drugs. And he's very matter of fact about his drug experiences in a very, very interesting, nice fashion, because he doesn't glamorize it, but he
No.
doesn't not glamorize it.
Not
He
least the
doesn't he
relationship
doesn't
with
re
the
he doesn't
relationship with
reject.
Nico, wasn't it? The
Yeah,
relationship with Nico was largely rooted in that drug culture.
yeah, he doesn't reject being a heroin addict, but at the same time, he doesn't encourage you to be one yourself. He's got he takes it like every takes everything else, and he takes everything in his stride.
Mm.
He seems to be able to like take everything with a pinch of salt. So when he's in trouble, he takes it with a pinch of salt. When he's successful, he takes it with a pinch of salt. He takes the whole lot. When he's a heroin addict, he takes it with a pinch of salt. He's the mild mannered man of rock and roll.
When you look at what happened, where's Seething Wells now, for example? What happened to him?
Mm, mm, mm.
Where's Linton Kwesi Johnson now? Benjamin Zephaniah has kept going from that era. Simon
Yeah,
Armitage is consistently present, and of course, all the more so now because of being poet laureate. Um, but there have been, Mark My Words, another one, that have their moment, and then the flame flickers and then dies out. And they're not with John, and I wonder why that is.
I think first of all, he's got his own distinctive visual persona. Secondly, he's got his own distinctive style of speaking. But I think
Mm,
it's mainly his personal charm. He's a very non-threatening guy.
yeah.
Everybody seems to love him. He's met or worked with loads of famous people over decades,
Mm,
and at all points they seem to take to him, which means people work with him, people help him out. So I think it's his personal charm. But although he's not the world's most productive poet, if you listen to lyrics on especially a lot of his early albums, some of the lyrics are just absolutely superb. They're sort of like a
yes.
British version of Bob Dylan's Beatnik phase, but with a bit more reality, because Bob was, quite a highfalutin guy
Mm,
who was above everything really. Whereas John Cooper Clarke's generally from the streets, and the poetry rings of the streets as well. So Beasley Street, probably his greatest poem, which is
yes.
at least 6 minutes long. It's all about poverty at a street level, and it's got so many great lines. But one of the best ones, which is dated politically because no one knows who Keith Joseph is anymore, but she was the man who helped Thatcher be
Yes.
Thatcher. And
Yeah.
there's a great little tiny line which says so much in about 8 words.
Mm,
Keith Joseph smiles and a baby dies in a box on Beasley Street. And that little line has about 4 ideas in it. And
mm.
it's so concise. Dylan would have spent about 15 words to get that across. So he's a sort of British version of what Dylan was in the 60s.
What about the music element? I think it was Martin Hannett that he worked with that produced the arrangements for him, where it became more than just performing the poetry with that rat-a-tat-a-tat, rat-a-tat-a-tat, rat-a-tat-a-tack-a-tack. The
Mm.
music became significant in several of John's albums, and actually, in some ways, it's hard to hear the song. I refer to it as a song, but the poem that you mentioned, which is probably Beasley Street, without perhaps thinking of the arrangement that goes with it, that was so bleak and so striking.
Well, the music involved like people like Pete Shelley and the main guy in the Chameleons, all you sort of like top Manchester post-punk or punk musicians at the time,
Mm,
and the future stars of Factory Records, and obviously Martin
mm.
Hannett producing it. And you get the impression from the book that JCC had little to do with how the music went. He was just there
Ah,
to do the lyrics, and he didn't have
yeah.
that much input. Not that he was
No,
complaining. He wasn't the
no,
sort of guy who was going to
no.
complain. But when he toured
Mm.
live, he only did 1 or 2 tours with live musicians. Even
Correct.
at his peak in
Mm,
the early
mm.
80s, he would mostly tour as almost like a stand-up comic, except doing poetry. So the music bit was essential to build his reputation in the late punk era, but it was never totally him. He never felt the need to like get involved with like how it went.
No.
But some of the backing on some of those great tracks in the 3 albums he did with Epic Records
Yes.
are great bits of music. And there's his early EP on Rabid Records. There's a track called Suspended Sentence, which John
Yeah.
Peel used to play all the time, 1977. And the backing makes that very alarming lyric by JCC about how the population would happily vote for the death sentence to be brought back. It makes the lyrics come alive because the backing's so interesting and so scary. So it was an important part of it, but JCC himself wasn't after his experience in beat bands in the 60s, he had no intention of being a musician again.
The other quirk, of course, when he performs is that unlike many who might record everything keep it on laptops, John is still a pen and paper man, and it'll turn up at a gig with a zip file of whatever he's been writing, and it's handwritten. It's not even typed. And that's how he is, and that is very revealing in its own way as well. That for him, whether that makes it more authentic, that it's there, handwritten. That's how he keeps. That's how he keeps everything. I assume somewhere there must be an archive, but he keeps his papers on him at all times.
Yeah, but you can't imagine JCC having a big enough ego to want to spend his whole time on Instagram
No,
or TikTok or even
no,
Facebook, because
no.
he'd think, why would I bother? Do I need it? No, I don't. Do I
But
want to like
I'm thinking in terms of that he carries round with him all the poems, and if it's freshly written something, there it is. And I know you will see poets bringing their latest works because they haven't yet cast it to memory, reading from it. But in his case, that is how he has everything with him.
I think it's all to do with the fact he's an authentic person. Nothing he
That's
ever
what
does,
that's exactly it. I think, isn't it? It's exactly
nothing
that.
he does is calculated.
No.
He's been successful almost by accident in some ways because he hasn't
Mm.
done anything. He
Mm.
hasn't schemed to be successful. You can't imagine JCC planning, a 6 month campaign to be successful
No.
or a 5 year campaign to break America. He's
No.
not that sort of bloke. So he would cling to pen and paper and books because that's how he feels comfortable and that's what he
And
likes.
maybe that's a contrast with a definite planning man, a plan B and a plan A planning man, which is Kevin Rowland, who has always been a strategist with his music making.
Mm,
And
mm.
I went to see Dexys, who formerly called Dexys Midnight Runners, of course, when most associated with the two #1 singles, Gino and Come On Eileen. So Dexys opened the latest tour, the latest version of Dexys, promoting their first album of original studio material since 2012, called The Feminine Divine. And when I interviewed Kevin, he said, look, the first half is not a concert. The first half is theatrical. The second half is a concert performance. And he was very particular about that. So the way that he structured the show was indeed basically a showcase for all the new album. But the way he did it theatrically in his terms, that he had 3 sections to it, each being introduced on the screen behind. One would be saying being honest. I think the last part said the relationship. And it was structured, and this is not the first time Kevin has done this. Going way back to Don't Stand Me Down, Kevin would be conversing with other members of the band who would be asking him things on stage, and Kevin would be responding. So when he describes it as theatrical, it's very much in the style of that. If one thinks of the song What's She Like, which was full of questions being asked. And in this case, those questions are being asked by the fellow musician Sean Reed. And the theatrical side, it's not like it's completely scripted to the nth degree. But after a song, Sean would ask Kevin how he was feeling, how his attitude had changed through that song. And the progression of the album is Kevin going from actually a song, the opening song on the album is the oldest song on there, a song that is reactivated from the past. And that then goes into Kevin reflecting on how he is now, with them singing back to him, "It's all right, Kevin." So he's reflecting on how he feels about manhood in 2023. Says he's going to get free from his attitudes. That's the third song. Then says he's coming home from however he's been, and then he's in a state of learning, of appreciating the feminine divine. And he has this protagonist, as he calls her, and that's played by Claudia Chopek, who is the violinist in the production.
Oh yeah.
In the first half, she's this feminine figure that Kevin is addressing throughout. The point that he's wanting to get across is that he's not, until now, really appreciated that women, just how powerful they are, how they are goddesses, how they're superior to men. Now,
this is typical Kevin. He always goes over the top in anything he gets into. Whatever his passion is, he goes the whole way.
That is beautifully put, because what bizarrely then happens is that she doesn't take over the vocals. In the song "My Goddess Is," she does sing a line, "So now you know, so now you know," because she's saying to him, well, now you've got it, now you've got what women are. But then we go into the next song, which was it's the second part of the album is synthesizer based, and it's a kind of a bit of a rather, well, not just a bit of a rather, that's an inarticulate phrase. It's a clunky synth sound in which she is establishing the goddess rules. But
is it her singing? Is she singing?
It's a talking. It's a talking track.
Oh wait, is she talking then?
This is where the slight irony of the evening is. The one moment she's got to say her bits.
It's a male-dominated show.
Well, she is the only woman that's in the show. You're right.
Yeah. There you go.
But the problem is, in her big moment, you can't hear what she's saying, nor what Kevin's saying.
Oh.
So she's laying down the goddess rules, albeit that Kevin seems to be still asking the questions largely. So he's asking her, "Are you feeling powerful?" And she'll be saying, "Yes, I'm feeling powerful." But it's still, I think the slight irony with this is that it doesn't give over completely to the woman at that point. And I do think actually this needs a song where she takes over and dominates the singing, not Kevin.
Yeah, but this sounds like typical Kevin to me. I mean, his idea of teamwork is everybody doing what he says. That's Kevin Rowland all over. And even though you got to admire the sentiments and the concept,
yes,
if he could only apply the concept to real life, you might buy it a bit better. But it's typical. It's a bit like saying he gathers his band together and says, "Look, from now on, I've had it with this band leader stuff. I realised I'm totally wrong. It's going to be democracy. I want everybody to have equal input. I want you all to contribute. I will no longer dominate everything."
Yes.
Is that right? Is that right? Can you just answer me? Is that right? Yeah, Kevin, that's right. Yeah, you're right, Kevin.
You're right,
that's
Kevin.
What it'd be like.
So we have the next song, "My Submission," is all where he offers, basically says, "I'm happy to be your pet. You can treat me however you want as your pet." And I'm thinking, yeah. So that was a little bit of a surprise as Kevin says that. He then gives the most beautiful vocal performance of the night within that song, where the lyric drops out and it's Kevin, as he did with "What She Like," expressing himself solely through the sound of his voice. And his voice is spectacularly beautiful in that moment. Now,
so what was the second half like then?
It ends up in equality because they then dance together, a little awkwardly, I thought. It was a bit stiff, with the song "Dance With Me," but again, it's him singing rather than her.
Wait a minute. And yeah, is that an order, by the way? "Dance With Me," brackets, that's an order, close brackets.
I mean, I know you're...
No, I love it. I love Kevin Rowland, but you can't expect me to take Kevin Rowland seriously, except as
Kevin would be really, if you don't, he's demanding you take him seriously. Graham, he would not be happy about this.
He's a great songwriter. He's a unique individual. He's got bags of personality. He's brave as hell. He's fearless about looking silly or not looking silly, whatever he does. And you sort of admire him for having the guts and for having the ideas.
Yeah.
But he's also always totally at the top. He doesn't actually practice what he preaches quite a lot of the time.
You're right. If you were to start doing a philosopher's analysis of this, there would be weaknesses in what he's trying to achieve, but it is fearless in its own way. His singing throughout was, I mean, it was spectacular. He's 70 now, as Kevin, but I think his singing is actually the best I've ever heard it.
Wow,
There are
that's
times when
great.
people used to go on about how he would yelp a little bit. There's none of that.
Yeah.
The singing. I think he's at his singing peak. So the second part of the show. So you've got her. Claudia is on violin. You've got saxophone. You've got trombone. So you've got the classic Dexys construction. You've got
So
the
is the second half?
synthesizers because that's what they've been using. It was
Is the second
comparatively
half like
short.
greatest hits? Is it a greatest hits? The
Well,
second half?
so we got Come On Eileen. We got Gino. It opened with a version of Plan B that was as good as I'd
Oh yeah.
ever heard it.
Oh
And
wow.
he then made a revelation. He said, "When I'm writing the lyrics when I was younger, didn't always know what I meant. Now I know what this song means." And it was old, and he was showing
Yeah.
beautiful photographs of Kevin with his father, and that's a beautiful, moving song. But it is all the more so for the imagery that he used. And that actually, see, that's the moment where you know how you say that he doesn't somehow things he can try and kind of trip himself up, but actually that song takes on a power that's probably never resonated as much as it does now. And the showmanship
Yeah.
is always been there, and it still
Oh yeah,
is.
obviously, yeah. He's a
So
great performer.
I thoroughly enjoyed the night. It did have those slight if if one's being uh, strictly analytical about what he's trying to give over to women being powerful and yet still completely dominating the show himself. There was that irony. But I've seen Dexys in myriad different forms over the years. I enjoyed this one as much as ever. And it was the opening night of the tour, so maybe that little issue of the sound for that one particular track, the Goddess Rules, that might be corrected for later.
I would compare him to two other famous British musicians.
Yeah.
No one has ever questioned and reinterpreted his own beliefs more strongly or regularly, and come back full circle or reject himself or re-accept himself more times than Kevin Rowland, except John Lennon. John Lennon regularly reassessed his own beliefs and rejected them, then came up with new ones that he then rejected. And the other person that he reminds me of, only in the sense that he's fearless, only in the sense that he's idiosyncratic, only in the sense that he can shoot himself in the foot, only in the sense that he hasn't done that many albums over the years, was the late Sinead O'Connor.
That's
They're
a good
both
call.
unique people.
That is a really good both those comparisons. I think you could probably throw Bob Dylan in there as well, Graham.
A little bit.
He kept reinventing himself, rewriting himself.
Dylan rarely went off the rails as much as Kevin Rowland's capable of going off the rails.
That's a fair point. But Sinead, yeah, absolutely. From the point of view of being out there, fearless, experimental, soulful,
changing
righteous,
your mind.
changing your mind. That's a really good comparison, Graham. Now, I'm always delighted to hear that when you've given an intellectual talk, which to the outside world, which is exactly what you've done. And this time it's on David Lean's The Bridge on the River Kwai, who, that was for the Harrogate Odeon's evening for the Harrogate War Memorial project. So what's the circumstances behind that talk, Graham? And then what did you decide to focus on within that talk?
Well, Harrogate's War Memorial is 100 years old in September. It was erected in 1923. It's a pretty impressive monument. It's got 1,163 names of men and women, mainly from the First and Second World Wars. And Harrogate Civic Society and a bunch of other community groups in Harrogate decided to mark the centenary by doing some special events. But being Harrogate, they've got 12 weeks of special events. They've done it like wholesale. And so impressive is the work they've done. The exhibition about all the names that are on the War Memorial, which is running at West Park United Reformed Church right now. It explains the story of all the people on the War Memorial, which is quite extraordinary, done by two local historians. And so impressive was the work by Terry Williams and Graham Roberts that they were on ITN News, national news, on Monday night. The ITN team had come to Harrogate to interview the two local historians. So it's a really massive memorial project, all done voluntary, not organised by the council or anything. And so Harrogate Film Society got involved as well. And the Harrogate Film Society is one of the best film societies in Britain. It's got a really international progressive art house programme every year. It's been going for 68 years. It's got loads of members. So when they said, Graham, we're going to show the bridge over the River Kwai as part of the Harrogate War Memorial project, would you like to come to the Odeon and introduce it? So being rude, like I usually am, I said, well, you do know it's an anti-war film.
Exactly.
And I thought, well, I've blown it there. They'll tell me to, bog off, just don't bother talking. But
Yes.
I was quite worried because it was for charity. It's for an army charity. So there's going to be an ex-military officer who runs the charity coming to the event who'd be speaking after me. So I thought, oh, good grief, I can't stand up and talk about it being an anti-war film. So, I did my usual sort of like analyze the film from a sort of intellectual ideas point of view, as well as the fact it was a huge success and won Academy Awards.
Yes.
Who was in it and who starred in it. And but I also reassessed the film from what it actually was trying to put across, what David Lean meant and the writers meant. And I decided that before the film, I decided, having seen it a few times, that it wasn't just about the madness of war. It was about the madness of war in the sense that Apocalypse Now is about the madness of war. So it wasn't really anti-war itself as much as it was about the madness of war. And I also decided that the behaviour of Alec Guinness, a superb performance, as Colonel Nicholson, the British POW leader who lets his troops help build the Burma Railway for the Japanese occupiers. Well, I decided that his obsessive behaviour and his willingness to help the Japanese build that railway, which in real life killed thousands of British POWs, it was a horrific experience. His decision to do that was motivated by him trying to cling on to civilization in the midst of brutality and barbarism. So I said, in some ways, he's quite admirable because he was just trying to keep things civilized amongst the horror. But then so I did all that, I said all that. The talk went down pretty well. I was quite pleasantly surprised how it went down.
Yeah.
Then I sat and watched the film on the big screen, and it's a brilliant film. But the longer it went on, the more I realised that it was in fact an anti-war film. And my first assessment had been entirely right. It was definitely.
Graham, I'm never surprised to hear that your assessment was right. Sure, you can't surprise me with that. My last question to ask, because we're running out of time on this. It's interesting, of course, Harrogate is the home of an army apprentice college. So, like Ripon's had a long connection with the military. Wonder whether that's a factor as well in memorials, knowing that young men go off from the apprentice college to take part in war.
Yeah, well, Harrogate's a very establishment place. It's a lot of the things that you would define as being part of the British establishment are all in Harrogate, or Harrogate has very close links to them. So Harrogate is connected to the whole of Britain, really, even though it's only one smallish town in Yorkshire. So yeah, the fact that the Army Apprentices College is just down the road means that these things matter more to people in Harrogate than perhaps other places. But Harrogate has done such a brilliant job that I've written about it ad infinitum in the Harrogate Advertiser over and over again for about the last 4 months. So I'm not sure how much more I can write.
Well, I'm going to go to go to the church that you mentioned, Graham, because I think that sounds fascinating to see that. So that's what I'm going to do that during this week, all being well, on the weekend. So thank you as ever for tonight, Graham. And go and listen to
Yeah.
Go on.
We must talk about Yorkshire Sculpture Park because you were going to talk
next week. Next week we will do that. All right. That's a promise.
That's good.
It's on till next year. It's on till way into next year. So we've got plenty of time to talk about it.
No rush.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.